Well, our reporter Tumaole Mohlaoli has been following the events at the state capture inquiry. He's in studio with me tonight. Tumaole, a very good evening to you. I guess, you know, on many levels, there was an expectation around what Sidney Mufamadi would speak about. That report of the high panel that he was leading has been made public. That was a couple of years ago. But some of the details that he's spoken about today are things that we haven't heard of before. And yet, he says him and his panel were responsible for investigating and, in fact, uncovered some of these things.
Yeah, good evening, Kathy. And some of these things that came out today really, you know, are astounding when you hear exactly how, you know, the state security apparatus was effectively redesigned with a view of pushing factional you know, battles that were basically being duplicated within the ruling party, and making sure that it served the interest of the factions rather than looking at the broader mandate of the state security apparatus. And at the core of this also, which was very astounding, was the fact that the state security apparatus was also being used to try and siphon, allegedly, finances and funds and redirect them directly to the former president's coffers in one way or another, and pockets. So these were some of the most hard-hitting revelations that came out.
Let's hear about some of the examples that Mr. Mufamadi alleges the state security fund was used for when it comes to the former president. And of course, part of why there are big questions around that fund is that it's not really regulated. You know, they just get a lot of money. And because it's under state security and classified, much of what happens ends up in the dark.
And this is what this particular you know, body that was set up to try and look at how the state security apparatus works was set up to try and find out exactly what would be done to try and give oversight to that. When you look at the figures, like you said, Kathy, some of it would be that the SSA was allocated about 2.5 million rand a month in cash payments that would go to former President Jacob Zuma for what remains a bit of a mystery. And that increased. This was between 2015 and 2016, 2.5 million rand a month. From 2016 to 2017, that ballooned to 4.5 million rand a month. And this was allegedly given to Minister Mahlobo, who was State Security Minister then, to give to President Jacob Zuma. What these payments were for, you know, when oversight bodies would try to inquire, it was then given a rebuke to say, no, state security matters cannot be then divulged because it falls under that particular ambit, which means there was no oversight, like you pointed out. And therefore, these payments would then go underneath the carpet and would be seen as operational matters that had to deal with the state security agency. Very questionable indeed.
If Sidney Mufamadi is to be believed, Tumaole, there's also the issue of the security problems that the former president has often spoken about before the inquiry. He talks about people who are after him, lots of conspiracies about people who want to claim his life. Part of the evidence today also shows us that it wasn't just something that he believed in his own quarters, but that the state security agency was then also used to try and, you know, verify some of these things. Talk to me about these officials that were hired specially to check for poisoning of the former president, potential poisoning. And I mean, what kind of job description did they have?
This is exactly what has come out in the testimony, Kathy, to test for the fears that the former president had. You would have specialists that would come in to test his food. Some specialists also, we've heard through the testimony, to test, you know, whether for toxicity levels in his bedding and other, you know, points of access that the former president would have in terms of his daily operational and daily, you know, living movements. So this was very, very bizarre for me, because this speaks to a certain paranoia that there seems to be a conspiracy, like you pointed out, to try and get former President Jacob Zuma. So you would have state security agencies would then be tasked with trying to find evidence that would prove that this actually existed and try to find who were the faces behind this.
It's one thing for Dr. Mufamadi to say all of these things. Has he been able to prove it? What evidence is he going to need to show to the commission, to even by form of money flows, to verify what he's saying and to prove that it's not just adding to the world of he said, she said that's coming out of this inquiry?
Well, I think with his position, as former Minister of State Security, he definitely comes to the Commission with a gravitas and a certain, knowledge of what would happen. And also because of that particular commission that he had chaired to look at these particular matters, they would have had depositions made by former operatives and those who would have wanted to, see the light being shed on some of these operational misdemeanors that were undertaken. Even though that some of these reports are classified, that seems to be some of the concern, and to say, how do you then uncover the lid without compromising the legislation that governs how the state security agencies work? So we will have to wait and see exactly how and where these particular revelations come from, but without, of course, like it has been pointed out, compromising the legislation.
Tumaole, I can already hear the rebuttal that would have come out of the former president's lawyers to this evidence. So Tumaole Mohlaoli there, he's been watching the State Capture Commission of Inquiry for us.